There's nothing more disruptive to the community that you've worked so hard to build around your podcast than to have someone on your show as a guest that's completely counterculture to what you stand for and believe in. You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 440. And today we're going to cover how to find the best guests for your show that actually help you grow it. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson here, authority amplifier to expert-based entrepreneurs who are ready to make big ripples of impact. And today I want to talk about something that comes up all the time. People who are in Authority Accelerator are asking, because many of them have their own shows, how do I find the guests that are actually going to make the right impact? And this is a kind of a deeper subject in the sense that if your show is a strategic part of your marketing, like vetting these guests and really qualifying them well is really important. And they not only are going to have a major impact on the culture that you're building around your show, this also can make or break how quickly your show grows and the kind of impact your show is having for your business directly. Now, I'm all for bringing guests on shows. I think it's a really powerful part of your growth strategy. There's a lot of good reasons to do it. And the quality of the guests matter. Now, I want to share a quick resource that might be super helpful. If you're a guest listening to this show, then what I want you to do is I want you to go get my scorecard. And this scorecard covers the 17 most common mistakes that guest experts make that cost them the lead and the client. And I developed this checklist because I kept having all of these people come into my program saying, I don't get why podcast guesting works so well for you because I don't get anything out of it. When I started vetting what they were doing versus what I was doing, because I was really finding that podcast guesting helped me attract great clients, I could see the mistakes. And they're common. They happen even to celebrity, big name speakers, all the way down to newer guest experts who recognize the value of being on other people's podcasts. So head over to melaniebenson.com/scorecard and you can download it. And then what I would highly recommend is score yourself and then read through the tips that are going to come your way. And then focus on aligning 2 to 3 of those with the right strategy that are going to move the needle for you. Now, I mentioned if you're a guest, I highly recommend listening to today's episode as if you are a guest. This is really a big part of what show hosts are looking for. And if you host your own show and you really want to dial this in, this is perfect for you today. Now, I mentioned that having guests on your show is a great way to help your show grow. Obviously, if you are using this strategy to help attract more listeners, then you want to make sure you have the right guests. Like just having willy-nilly guests doesn't really serve you. And important, if you are using your podcast as what we call the top of the funnel, which is what attracts people into your work, and you're using it to nurture listeners until they are ready to become your clients, you need to make sure you have quality guests because this is part of the experience that you're giving them. And like many show hosts, especially if you've hit the top 10% on Listen Notes or you're super visible on like social media with your show, you're probably starting to get flooded with pitches and requests to be on your show. But I highly recommend you don't go the route of just doing a post saying, I need guests. Who wants to be on my show? To me, that's a huge red flag that show's not right for me or any of my clients that I help pitch and place on shows. So, how do we make sure that you are selecting the right guests, especially when you have an abundance of guests coming your way? I'm going to go a little bit deeper into vetting in part two of this episode in the next week's session. Today, what I want to talk about is who would make a good guest. Because if you don't really know what the avatar is of a good guest, it's really hard to sort through all the stuff and figure it out. And in case you don't know this, you're going to have big name experts who want to come on your show at some point. But even like the celebrity experts in your niche don't always make the best guests. That's why we vet every single guest that we bring on the show against a set of criteria to make sure, even if they have a big name or a big brand presence or seem really perfect, we want to make sure that all of the pieces that are important to us are getting alignment. Now, of course, everything I'm about to share with you in this episode and in the next episode is predicated on the format of your show and what kind of value you want from the guests on your show. So I have an expert-based interview series when we have guest experts, but you may do something different. You may be really focused on the stories they're telling. You may not necessarily care about some of the things that we're going to cover. And so just know if you're looking for your guest expert strategy, that you have guests on your show to help grow the show and bring more listeners, this is for you. Now, there's three key areas that we focus on at this time in my podcast growth. Now, keep in mind also, my podcast is 8 years old. We're airing episode 440, right? Like, so this is something we've kind of ebbed and flowed with. We've looked for different things along the way. We've experimented with paid sponsor spots. We have, alternated the different types of guest strategies that we use. And I've done runs where I've just done solo episodes. And I like having a sprinkling of guests. You'll probably notice that lately we've been alternating between more of my solos, sprinkling in some on-air coaching episodes, which are really fabulous if you're looking for strategic guidance that you're not paying for coaching on. Like, I offer these complimentary right now. So that is a real value to that community, and having some guest experts. So we're sprinkling it through, and that works for this stage of my podcast. If you are brand new in your podcast, I highly recommend having a strong guest expert base on your show, because it's going to help grow your listener base if you do it the way I teach you. Now, here's the core three areas we focus on. Value of the topic story. We're looking for the wisdom that aligns and can bring value to you, the listeners, the energetic alignment, and reach. So let me unpack that a little bit. First of all, let me talk more about value, because at the surface, you probably get, yes, there's a valuable topic. There's something that the listener can take away. Of course, that's what we always want, right? So I do look for people who I believe the conversation and the wisdom they're going to bring is massively valuable for you, my listener. I really I want every episode to be something that at least 50 to 60% of the amplifier community is going to get value from. Now, I know everybody has different needs, right? So we can't always hit it 100%. Second, is this topic and this person bringing something unique and what I consider lighthouse worthy? So you probably heard me talk about the lighthouse messaging. I believe that this is something that is going to really help my guests stand out. And when I'm teaching you how to be a good guest expert on other people's shows, I want you to have that lighthouse quality, because it helps you stand out in whatever audience or platform that you're on. I don't want the same topics. I don't want the same energy, but I do need to make sure that it's synergistic with mine. Which brings me to the third quality around the value of the topic. And that is, and this is something we've dialed in over time, it can't have too much overlap with my offerings. And it's so fascinating to me how people pitch all the time. We have a form that we use, and they're literally teaching the same exact thing. I'm like, did you not do any research about the show at all? Like, do you? Because that's definitely against what I teach in a guest expert strategy. And I'm not going to book them. So if they do have some similar qualities and offers to me, I tell them like, hey, look, I think you would be great, but there has to be something synergistic, not competitive. And here's why. Like, I'm a big collaborator. I know I can always find a collaborative energy with people, even if they do some similar things. But if you bring people on who literally are your exact competitors, you are confusing your audience. And one of the things you have to be aware of is at a certain point, the guest experts you bring on your show may actually be receiving a fair amount of attention from your community, and it pulls the attention off of you. So there's a fine line and a little dance that you have to do. And you're not building an audience to showcase other people and let them build their businesses from it. You're building an audience for your business. So there's a little fine line that you have to look at here to find complementary, synergistic topics versus people who are so the same as you. Your audience will go, well, why don't I just work with them? And whoever the most magnetic, inspiring conversation in the moment is, they lean into that. Now, you'll probably notice over the years, I was not as tuned into that. I was very much in my collaboration era, if you will, and I'm fine with that. But at a certain point, the more successful a podcast is, I think it's really important to kind of dial that in a little bit more. And I do a lot of research when I'm going to be a guest on someone else's show to make sure that I'm really looking at the where's the synergy rather than, are we too overlapped, and suggest something that's synergistic. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we've reintroduced the on-air coaching segments, and so that's cut way back on the guest experts. And I don't have as many guest experts anymore because of that. And also because I feel like there's a lot of value that people get from eavesdropping in on somebody being coached. And that's a different kind of wisdom and expertise that I think serves our community really well right now. Plus, I love them. And so when we are accepting guest expert pitches, I'm actually looking for guests that are not just experienced, but really claim their level of authority. So they recognize they have wisdom, they're building more of an authority profile. I do sometimes lean more into just expertise because what I don't want is somebody who's brand new at what they're doing and all over the place with their methodology. So I want people who have proven expertise. So I really look for that in the qualities and the attributes of a guest that's coming on the show. And that may not be as important to you depending on the format of your show. Now, let me get into key area number 2, and that's the energetic alignment. And hands down, the single most important thing I'm looking for when a guest is being considered for my show is the values alignment. Because look, there is nothing more disruptive to your community than to have someone on your show that is counterculture to what you stand for and believe in. It's disruptive, not in a good way, unless that's the whole premise of your show. But I got to tell you, when I look at a show, somebody's inviting me on their show, and I see all of this completely all over the place, energy, values. I mean, it's like it's everywhere. I don't really feel like I understand the show's culture, and I don't really know where I fit into that. I'm probably not going to say yes to it. And again, this is purely your what do you want your show to be about? Now, I don't have guest experts on the show that have specialties or business models that I don't believe in. I get a lot of people pitching. I'll give you a couple examples. I've had a lot of people pitching crypto or cannabis businesses or network marketing businesses, and no shade on those businesses, but they're not ones I personally subscribe to. They're not ones that I really want to highlight. It's not really the culture of what I teach and what we believe is valuable for you at this stage. So I pass on them. You'll notice that I pretty much stick to what serves an expert-based business. I also don't have a lot of C-suite leadership style guests on the show because I don't really think that's dialed into my ideal client and the needs that they have. Now, once in a while, the leadership premise is we do teach people how to be leaders. My Ripple Makers program is all about stepping up as a leader in your industry. And whether that's thought leadership or impact driven leadership, that is really interesting, but that's a different kind of leadership than C-suite leadership. So you can see values alignment, expertise alignment. And now here's the third one. Can they deliver a magnetic conversation? Boring doesn't move the needle. Boring doesn't get listened to. There are very few people who have boring delivery that the episodes are going to get traction. And we've tracked that. Okay, so there are some qualities that can make someone who's maybe a little more monotone have a good experience, but literally, you have to be able to drop in and inspire if you want to be on my show. If you're really monotone and you don't bring the energy and you don't bring clarity and you don't have something that can inspire people into action, it's probably not a good fit here. And I'm not saying they have to buy your stuff. I'm just saying, like, get people excited about something. I spend a lot of time with the Authority Accelerator clients who are learning how to bring their expertise out on the microphone to figure out ways to bring that magnetic quality to the conversations they're having. Because I want their episode to be powerful, and I want listeners, when they're out there on the airwaves, to become leads for them. At a minimum, I want them to be really interested and intrigued by that person's work in the world. So we're looking for that on the end of people coming on my show. And then the last energetic piece is, do they tend to lead from their ego or their heart? I know you know what I mean here. Look, we need ego. Ego is what causes people to have some ambition. But when you lead entirely from your ego, and this can start the minute you pitch. When you're pitching some host like me and you're leading with, hey, I'm the most amazing person in this industry, you should have me on your show, or you pull diva moves. It's like, why would you ask me to fill out that form? Like, don't you know who I am? That's ego. You're never getting on my show that way. And I actually hear from a lot of other hosts how absurd it is when they receive those types of communications. I know you're not like that, but I just want to say, when we bring guests on the show, I try very hard to sort out the ego driven. And, to me, ego is all money, no impact. If it's all about the money and there's no impact in the message, that's probably not a good fit here either. Okay. Now we want some kind of results oriented energy. So I like the balance. But I had a guest one time many years ago. I'm not going to say who it was, but this is somebody who's a really big name in the marketing world. And they were so bad. I mean, I didn't vet him properly. I took him on name. He was a celebrity guest. I was like, oh, that'll be great for the show. I love what he's about. People rave about his programs. This dude was so bro marketer and so in his ego and name dropped every other word. And I just I wanted to actually delete the episode, but I knew some people would get value out of it, so I didn't. And he actually asked to come back on the show again, and I was like, nope. But this is what I mean. Like, there's a place for that. I know maybe it's the Joe Rogans of the world, but there are podcasts that might fit better. It's not a fit here. So this is why I want you to get really clear, like, what is the energetic qualities you're looking for in your guests? Okay. And there's no right or wrong to it. You got to figure out what's the right fit for your show. This is where the kind of the guest avatar comes in. Now, the third factor is reach. And reach has a couple pieces to it. And this piece is important if you want the guest experts on your show to be part of your audience growth, your listener growth strategy. So one thing you could look for in reach is, does this guest have brand recognition that will draw listeners in? In the industry, we call this like show candy, right? It's like, these are the celebrities that, think Mel Robbins or maybe like an Amy Porterfield. And maybe in some industries, I might be considered that, right? Like, some people really look at the brand recognition and it's like, oh, people recognize that name. It's like kind of a household name, or it's an industry-wide name, and they're going to bring listeners, not necessarily because they share it, but because that brand is super interesting and intriguing. Like a Brene Brown would be considered that, right? Now, you don't want to only have like celebrity draw or candy, show candy type guests, because guess what? They rarely share the shows they're on. If you look at their feeds on social media, unless it's another really huge name, they're probably not sharing that they're there. And if they do, you know what they're doing? They are putting it in their Instagram story, which disappears. It's fleeting. So if you're okay with that, great. I think it's good to sprinkle some in, especially in the beginning, to show and demonstrate that you're getting some really high quality guests on the show. It can draw in your own audience, but it won't necessarily draw other audiences unless you're doing a good job of SEO and the SEO brings the listener base. So you want to make sure that you have guests who fit the bill of what you need. Now, another possibility is, do they have their own significant reach? And do they share the episodes? So do they have a social media presence? And do they share the guests that they're on? Now, this is controversial, I know. And everybody has to start somewhere. And so, when you're speaking to the podcast guests for a moment, if you want to be a guest on new shows and you want to help grow your own audience and grow your social media base, through this exposure, you may need to shoot for shows that have a smaller reach and build up. If you have a pretty significant reach on your show, or you want to grow your reach, if you're bringing guests on that don't bring their own reach and they don't share the show, you're not going to get what you need. So this is something we're going to talk about in the next episode when I talk about how to vet this. How do you really figure out ahead of time what people are willing to do and what they're going to follow through on? Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is important. This last piece is really important if you care that people grow the show. And some people are like, I don't care. It's not what I need. There may come a time that you do. So just keep it in mind that you want to consider, is the reach of my guest valuable as part of what we look for to bring people on the show? So for us, again, this has grown over time. I've had my fair share of really awesome, celebrity guests on the show. They usually don't share it. And because that's something that I do care about, we actually look for guests that have a track record of sharing on their show, because I don't necessarily want to just like give my audience to anybody that comes our way. Like, we want to co-create and collaborate together. Okay, so that's really my theme, is collaboration. And so we look for ultimately people that collaborate. And actually, if I could give you a bonus tip, that's one of the things I look for, is people that want to co-create together. They're looking for collaborations, and they know this podcast interview will open the door, and it's a way to date somebody and get a sense of who they're going to be and how they're going to show up in a more structured collaboration. And I can tell a lot by how somebody shows up and collaborates with me. Do they go above and beyond? Do they do the bare minimum? Do they do nothing? If they're really looking to collaborate with me, how the podcast guest interview goes and how they share it tells me a lot about the potential of the long-term collaboration. Okay, I'm going to be coming back next week with part 2, and I'm going to walk you through how we vet guests. So I told you today the qualities we're looking for, but I didn't tell you how do we suss it out. And it's enough that I don't want to make this episode too long today, so we're going to break it into 2 parts. So bookmark the show, mark your calendar. If you're like, how does Melanie do this? I'll walk you through what we ask in my form, as well as how we kind of proof it out to make sure that the viability is really there. And it's been really, really helpful. And I'm very proud of the guests we bring on the show. They're amazing. And I hope this will help you with bringing up the quality of the guests on your show and actually turning your show into a powerful part of your community and list building and lead generation activity. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. We're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.